I'd like to welcome you to our second event in the VITAL. VITAL stands for?
Valuing Ireland's Teaching and Learning.
So it's all about you guys and the lecturers and the admin staff and estates and all of us who work together to create IADT. And of course the most important part of that is the students. And today we're going to be talking about academic integrity, and I'm delighted to welcome the lovely, wonderful USI Academic Affairs Officer and a woman who's going to tell you a lot more about herself. This is Megan O'Connor, and she's joining us just directly from the launch of Next Steps, which was very great this morning. And if you were interested in that, the next steps of what's going to happen after now, what's happening next, what are we moving towards in terms of education, and it's an exciting thing to do. This is Rachel Scarsfield-Ryan, and she is your education officer here in IADT. She's the vice president of the SU and an amazing person. So if you have any problems, anytime that you want to kind of touch base, anything that's educational or your Susie grant or anything like that, this is the woman to talk to. And she will sort it all out for you. And she's a pretty amazing individual as well. You can see we have a film crew here today, and they're just documenting what's happening. So don't worry, but you all look amazing. So, you know, strike the pose. Right. Okay, so we kick?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to talk about, academic integrity. So we wanted to kind of start, what we're going to do with this is this talk is going to be kind of fluid. So Rachel and Megan will, kind of join in. Maybe I should move this. Can you guys see this if I move it a little bit this way? Can you guys see this?
Yeah,
you can see it? Okay, great. So we're going to have conversations all the way through the presentation rather than just questions at home. We're going to keep an eye on time, if I could ask Scott to do that, and give me the high sign. We're a half hour in, okay? So, because we don't want to keep you too long away from the lunch. Academic integrity, the first thing we wanted to talk about is what is the definition of that? But firstly, the coffee are the key facts. So you get that? So coffee, I have to have that before I get anywhere in the morning. Then, so our definition here is pretty succinct, and this is from QQI, who are the quality, Qualifications Ireland. Say it again?
Qualifications Ireland.
Qualifications Ireland. I kind of had a brain dump there. So this is the commitment to demonstration of honest and moral behavior in an academic setting, which kind of we all do, right? We are what all of us work for, not just the students, but also the staff. This is why I've added, if you guys notice, I'm doing my APA, got the references going all the way through, so, it's kind of good. So we're going to talk today a little bit about things that get in the way of that academic integrity and how vulnerable students can be, and how you're kind of preyed upon, if I may, to take up these contract cheating websites and SAMLs and such, and ways that we can find solutions to that. Okay, how many of you guys have heard of SAMLs? Okay, and contract cheating, have you heard that expression? So we've got some newbies here, thank God. Okay, I don't want to put, this is not advice to do, okay? This is advice to avoid. So just to make that clear. And we're going to, SAMLs are basically, contract cheating SAMLs, they're kind of the same thing. You pay someone to write something for you or to impersonate you in a final or whatever. And then it's, not exactly academically, it doesn't have the integrity that we would hope. And it does happen, thankfully not much here. As a matter of fact, that's because Ireland passed in 2019. We were the first country to look at, the litigation bans the provision and advertisement of these services. But it's funny because online you could find them pretty easily. I do have to say that in truth, but they are actually banned from advertising to you or providing this service. Did you want to chime in a little bit?
And I think one of the key things that we're really fortunate with that legislation is that it criminalises the SAMLs and the providers who are trying to catch students out, which isn't the same conversation that we're having internationally, particularly with the UK, who are trying to, not trying to, but there is a risk of them criminalising the students that utilise those services. But most of the time, it's when that student is the most vulnerable that these services prey on. So we are very fortunate with the wording of that legislation.
Yeah, it specifically says that it does not criminalize the learner who cheats, though Now, there are repercussions for cheating. You could lose your academic standing. You could, and go as far as being expelled if it is a repeat offense. So, you're safe, but you're not. It depends. Like, do you value your education? I don't know if you guys have participated in the different kind of prompts we have around, but that's that question of, what is it to be a great learner? And, what is the value of your education over these 4 years? And how important is that to you? And why would you jeopardize it? Because every student I've ever met who's here, they may not know exactly what they're going to do in their life, but they know that right here, right now, these are really important years to help them make those decisions going forward. So, but not only are SAMLs damaging to you guys, because it's usually when, you're overworked, you're under time pressure, people go, oh God, I can't even start this thing, I'm just going to, whatever, I'm going to see if I can, but this is not good. And not only is it not good for you, but it's actually exploiting workers in third world countries, because even though most of these things say they're coming from the UK, most of the ones we have here are all about, oh, this is being done in London for you and all this crap. They're not, okay? And if you look closely at the advertisements, I have a couple examples of those later on, you'll see the English, the translation into English is uneven, to say the least, and they're basically paying people like €1 a day to write, or €1 a paper maybe, and you're being charged like 250 euros, and €1 of that goes to someone who has an education, but they're being exploited as well as workers in Africa, primarily in Kenya, and also in Pakistan, and there's another. I think so. In China. China's really has people basically working in essay mills the same way that they would have people working in, like, giving you likes, that kind of thing, in the social media optimization things. It's kind of cracky. Any thoughts on that, or you want to?
Yeah, it's a huge piece, and I think as well the language around it, and most people, it's not a very accessible language that we use, and it is actually quite a new area. So if you think about KPOI and think back to when you were like applying to college and everything, there are institutional reviews that KPOI carry out every few years with institutions, and they basically oversee the quality of the education that you're receiving. So if you were found out to be engaging with these services, that can threaten your entire degree. And the impact of that, I think, isn't always understood, because we do have a habit in practice on the ground. It can be very threatening language. It can be very much the college versus the student, don't plagiarize. And that can be the extent of a lot of those conversations, and I think that's something that we're really trying to change. So when you look at terms like academic integrity, that itself isn't actually very accessible, so we're working really hard to trying to bridge that gap and ensure that that is the language that we're using when we first start college and start our studies, and it just needs to be a huge part of it, because these essay notes are so sophisticated.
Yeah, they are. And I think the thing is all of us use the internet to do research, right? This entire presentation, everything that I researched for this specifically, I did it online, because, and you can use that's a huge resource that we have. So this was different, and you'll see the list at the end, but that's all legitimate kind of stuff. But the problem is that is exactly as Megan is saying, it's a new language, right? When you're starting to write academically, it's a completely new language, and you need time to do that. How many of you know what plagiarism is? Okay, so does someone want to give me have you seen it in secondary school? It's pretty rampant, isn't it? I would say, yeah. I mean, basically, people just copy something from the internet and say, "There you go, I did that," and that's not a bad thing to do in secondary school, I think.
My experience, though, of looking at students in second level is the teachers are conscious of it, of students not just doing a complete dump of what you find online. So it's not that the concept is it doesn't kick in just when you arrive in the door of a third level. Now, obviously, third level is a lot stricter around it, and there's norms and expected behaviours which you're hoping to introduce students to when they come in. Yeah. But from my observation, I think secondary school
is getting better.
Is commenting on it and is encouraging students to be more aware of where things are coming from.
Because it is an awareness thing, really. I mean, if you're not taught,
that's where the language of, like that Megan was saying, moving away from that kind of threatening language of academic integrity, where it's not very accessible. when you're in secondary school, you're kind of moving from rote learning to self-directed
Mm.
learning,
Yeah.
and that's something that is a very big bridge.
Yes.
A very big change and transition. And I think students don't understand and don't recognize to have pride in their own work, whereas before it's just kind of making sure that you get all the information that your lecturer or your teacher is asking you for,
Yeah.
rather than actually going out, researching it for your own approval of your own knowledge,
Yeah.
and moving yourself forward, and taking that pride in your own work where, look how far I've come and I'm progressing, whereas
Exactly.
that's not necessarily where they're coming from in secondary school, and then that's where academic integrity comes in.
Absolutely, and I think there's huge amounts of work that needs to be done in that student-staff partnership side of things with assessment bunching, because I think staff aren't always provided with the ability to ensure that all of the assessments aren't falling at the same time, and we are coming into that time of the year where I'm sure you're all well aware of it. End of November, beginning of December, suddenly everything is due. You can have personal circumstances come up. You can have one small essay or group project that's really stumping you that you end up spending too much time on, and then all of a sudden you end up really, really stuck for pressure. And I think a lot of the time, because we don't necessarily have those conversations that I think at a higher level, the higher up you go in my experience, the easier it is to have that partnership. But I think we really need to ensure that it's embedded in classrooms and in colleges across the country, because students need to be provided with that space to reach out and say, hey, I'm stuck.
I'm struggling. Yeah.
I'm struggling.
Yeah.
And I don't think we necessarily have that culture everywhere. I think it's come on leaps and bounds in the last few years, even through my time in college.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the time it's when those moments hit where you're faced with, okay, you can repeat the year if you want, and you can pay your fees again next year, and you can pay for your accommodation again next year, or you can make a frantic attempt at trying to pass your year, so that you don't let people down, you don't let yourself down, you don't let whoever's paying your fees down. And so many of the instances where I've encountered students being really, really stung by these has usually been that. It hasn't been anyone trying to get a quick, good grade. More often than not, it's somebody that just is really struggling.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that the good thing here is that you actually, most of our courses, you're not going to get your award until, some people will be considering awards by the end of year 3 that would go towards your 4th year award. But so if you learn the right way to do it in your 1st and 2nd year in terms of academic integrity and how to use the internet as your, as your go-to, and the library and different things we'll discuss, then by the time you're doing a thesis, if you have to do a thesis, you'll be on the pig's back, as they say. Sorry. Yes, so I mean, this is these are kind of the dark side. I know that Megan and Rachel both have had experience with this. And see, in my day, when I was accused once of plagiarism, and I hadn't plagiarized. And it was, I was so incensed, and I was like, but you have no proof. Now, you can't, lecturers, if have to have, they could say, look, I really think you've plagiarized. And they have a right to say to you, I want you to explain these concepts that you've talked about in this paper to me, as like what's called a viva, or a viva. So you're through your own work. I don't think that that's a bad idea sometimes, because it gives you presentation skills as well. But in my day, which was back in like 110 years ago, the guy just said, well, I just feel it. And I was like, yeah, you can get off that horse, sorry. So anyway, I ended up getting an A. But as you do, but it was in technical theater. Like, I'm crap at hammering nails, but I can write a paper, so that wasn't my, Anyway, so this is kind of dark. But the behavior of essay mills, students who have challenged, like, the problem is the work that they get is not A+ work or anything like that. They promise this and that, but that's not what it is. So the students who go back to the thing, they have been blackmailed, and go on and tell them.
It's awful.
Yeah, it's really bad.
It's one of those things that, so I only really started getting involved in this space about a year and a half ago. And it was all completely new to me, and I was that girl that was always really into all of this stuff. And to understand how deep this goes, and how detrimental it can be to people's lives is quite shocking. So QQI set up the name group, which we will touch on shortly, but all of the reports are coming through, right? So we in Ireland thought we were doing fantastic because we weren't hearing much about these essay mills, but what we actually found out was, no, we just can't find them. They're there, we just aren't aware of them. So I think we've really come on a lot in that in the last few years. But there's been many different cases, but examples of it could be a student would pay maybe €250 for their essay. But what the company will do is they'll let you submit it. You put it in, you get your grade back. They'll come back to you 6 months later when you've forgotten about it and say, hey, we want $2,000 or we're going to tell your institution you paid us to write your essay. Yeah. We have the essay. We have your assessment details that you sent us. Yeah. We want further payment or we're going to sell you out. And in many cases, when the student was not able to pay that fee, they did exactly that. Yeah. So when we are lecturing about academic integrity and the importance of staying away from these essay mills, it is absolutely not a do your own work kind of a thing. It's please be careful because they are so insidious. They target people directly on WhatsApp. Another instance was they got into an institution. This thankfully was in Australia, I think it wasn't here, but they got into a WhatsApp group. And basically got all of the assessment details for that class for the whole year, and we're just targeting them individually. There's also been a huge number of cases here where students are getting targeted on LinkedIn, and there's also these red and white posters that are appearing everywhere. So please, if you see them, please do let Rachel or anybody else know. But they're popping up everywhere. They're all over the country.
Yeah, I get emails like from individuals who are apparently going to offer proofreading or essay writing services to help students with essays or other projects, and they're very clearly not real individuals. Or I also sometimes in my Twitter handle I have #educationforall because I think it's a really great campaign, and I would get follows from other random accounts and stuff, and then I would get messages and on my LinkedIn and things like that. So they also just come straight to me. Because I have education in my tags or my email account as well, so they're very
very insidious.
Well-oiled machines.
It is. They believe they're organized by that organized crime, because it's a lucrative situation. When you start to get lots of anything that's lucrative is going to be attractive to people who don't, who work in a different way for a living.
So if you do get those messages, please do send them on to Rachel, and she'll send them on to me, and we'll work with KPOI to ensure that they get shut down, because although you ignore that message, somebody else might not.
Yeah.
So please do always alert somebody to it.
So I just wanted to show you in the next slide, just a common, kind of the marketing kind of stuff that they're going to use, okay? And these are for a nursing essay mill. And they use buzzwords like trustworthy, custom, affordable, originality, and they have pictures of these beautiful people with stethoscopes, and it's very enticing. However, if you read more carefully into it, and it's kind of hard to do on the slide, but I'll have these as a PDF on our website at some point, so you guys can see all those. But if you read them, you'll see there's a lot of mistakes in grammar and that kind of thing, and there's weird words that they're using, and it's kind of odd. So, for example, services writing services are extensive and unique to improve grades. We have a team of best writers who cope up our clients. I don't know what they're trying to say there, to deliver them customized tasks at affordable price range. So when you read that, you kind of go, that sounds a little odd. What's cope up? I have no idea. And so they're not too hard to spot, but they will be using this. And they all have something like this, which says it's a custom online academic help providing assistance. Now it's not, it says, we just want to provide the help to students, and our papers should be used for the reference purpose only. Okay, nobody is allowed to use our papers for a commercial purpose or without the reference. So you're paying for something that they're saying you can't use without referencing that someone else wrote this, and that's them getting off the hook of trying to doing what it is that is illegal. And literally, it's crackers.
And they impersonate a lot of websites.
Yes,
is what they've been doing recently. So. Again, Australia is just 10 years ahead of us. They're so on it, but also the cases that they have are dire. But they had their qualifications website mimicked, and it looked exactly the same. It was a similar HTTP or whatever. So they're so clever.
Yeah, they are.
Another site that I have seen on actually a couple of them they've had reviews from students who apparently use the services.
Yes.
I remember one was from Trinity, and obviously the reviews are in slightly poor translations as well. They don't read quite right. There's like a word that's, that doesn't sound quite right. And then there's others from like DCU and things like that. So that's
They have found actually in Australia that the most vulnerable students are the international students, because not only are students, they're working in a second or third language, so the pressure that everybody else has on them is magnified. So they're extremely vulnerable. So reach out and kind of say, anyway, there's lots of ways we can, and let me get to those, our solutions, because it is a little bit of a horror story. But I just have to tell you this funny thing. This young man, young to me, this guy was featured on LinkedIn as a guy named Kevin McCabe, who's the author of a number of supposed author of these great papers that people are doing. And he's not running an essay mill. He says, I'm a history teacher in County Clare. So this random guy just took a photograph of somebody off LinkedIn, stuck it onto their own profile, and this guy, Kevin McCabe, was trying to say, oh no, I'm totally legit. But in fact, he's completely, God knows who he actually is. And I just wanted to share with you, this is sort of, the BBC did a number of different things, and this one is about contract cheating, just to bring it to national awareness of what was going on, because it's a big problem over there. And I think this is just a couple minutes, but... So I'm going to just pause it there. The URL for it is on there. There's only a few more minutes, but I kind of want to, get to our solutions, before we let you guys. But any thoughts on it? Just I was surprised to see how pervasive it was, particularly in England. It's like everywhere. What do you guys think?
I was surprised to see at the end those two university students how they looked at it and they thought, oh well, that's legit, that's fine, that's not cheating. Until it was actually explained out to them at the end by the journalist there. I thought that was crazy how it just seems like very greedy, like they don't really give a shit, pardon my language, about their audience, and they're just promoting it for money.
Well, that's the thing too. That's really, a lot of young kids are watching this stuff, and
it's the young kids who they're targeting, and they're the ones who are most vulnerable by this as well. Because they don't know. I'm not going to generalize. They don't know any better. They're going to be easily led.
So I think one of the things here is they maybe live a moral life, in a bigger way than just academic integrity. Think about your integrity as a human being and how that can be compromised by not just something like this, but anything that's going to get in the way of looking at your values and say, what do I hold important to me? But that's a bigger conversation. Any other thoughts from you guys before I move on to I think we're on, the quality of work and why. We kind of covered that. Well, we covered the quality of the work, and it's not very good is the main point. It'll get you a C, but when you're paying so much money for it, why don't you just do the thing? Do you know what I mean? It's not. You put so much into, cheating the system. Maybe try to put that much into using the system in the best way possible. I'm just saying. Anyway, so this guy says, sorry, is this Lancaster? No, this is Draper. He says that there's 3 reasons that people cheat: opportunity, and the second one is hectic exam schedules. I know in IDT, are you guys doing a course that has exams?
We're doing continuous assessment.
Oh, you do all CAs? Yeah, okay. That tends to be better in terms of, our student styles. What about the other courses that you guys are doing? Is it continual assessment, or do you have exams at the end?
CAs.
CAs, all CAs. You have some exams, I think, in business
Yeah, not many.
Not many. I remember I was, when I was first teaching in business, and Connor, you were there too, I was shocked. I actually couldn't believe that, there were so many exams. So we've really phased them out over the decade or so, which is good because it suits our learners much more, and it makes the workload more manageable, and it's not just like puking a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper under time pressure.
We know that doesn't work.
Yeah,
it's a
no.
fun thing, and there's actually a really, really fun thing that came out recently. It's on YouTube. I can share the Rebecca afterwards.
Oh, great.
But basically, there's this guy who's really into tech, because assessment has to change, right? It is changing, but it needs to change faster than what we're going at the minute. And I think everything that's happened over the last 18, 20 months has further proven that, because we see so many students being failed by our education system, either that be through the Leaving Cert, which is currently going through the Education Committee for Reform, in case any of you are interested in that, but also particularly in our third level sector, that there are too many people that fall through the cracks, and an awful lot of that is because the assessment design doesn't work, and we're not actually challenging students to master their topic. We're challenging how much you can cram the night before. And we're seeing, abuse of study aids and study drugs that can really have an impact on your health, but they're kind of just normalised sometimes in libraries across the country, which really is less than ideal. And then we also have all of this, so it ties in, but I think what we really, really need is for students to kind of stand up and give feedback to your lecturers, because they can't do it without you either, so everyone needs guidance and to work together in moving that forward. But the guy, that I started talking about, he was on about contact lenses, right? And he believes, and this is the guy working the whole academic integrity space in the US, or in Canada, he believes that there will soon enough be contact lenses that you can, I swear, that you can blink, and that your paper or something, like you can screenshot a thing and it will appear in front of you, that you can just write it down. And I was absolutely gobsmacked hearing that. I was like, oh my goodness, it's kind of like this dystopian world. But they really do believe that we're not actually far away from just there being such incredible ways of cheating, that everyone is going to be trying to undermine the work that's being done. So how can you ever trust it? Speaking to your own experience, I just feel it. There is so much technology out there to pick up on plagiarism, and plagiarism is the one that we keep coming back to. We keep talking about it because it's the classic copying. It's the classic kind of blame game that we kind of encounter, where a lot of it is hearsay. So I think we need to move forward from those conversations. We need to move forward with a really, really collaborative kind of space, and speaking up if you're not happy with something. Talk to your student representatives and ensure that your voice is heard, because that's what we do every day.
I kind of wanted to add this is more for you. There's a link here to our own plagiarism policy. I don't know if you guys have looked at it, but it is up online, and it's there for you to understand, because there are different types of plagiarism: minor, moderate, and major. And it goes through what that means. And when a first year plagiarizes, it's noted, but it's usually you're able to resubmit with the permission of your lecturer, and your mark won't be capped. But that's your gift. If it happens again, then it becomes more moderate. And if it happens in a major piece of work, like a thesis or something, then it could become quite severe. But that's not going to happen, because you guys are in charge of this, right? You own your education, and that's exactly what I think people need to know. So we were kind of talking about solutions, and these are some of the things. I think small class sizes are really helpful, because it gets you to know your lecturer as an individual, as someone who is there to support you, who is there to take you through this process, and to celebrate your learning. And that can happen. I mean, that happens here a lot more than it would in somewhere like UCD. People don't know anyone's names. You would probably know the names of your lecturers to some extent, or whatever. Now, some might terrify you, which is fair enough, right? There's scary people out there, but in general, they're extremely approachable, and we have that. I'd love to keep that going. I know it's not financially viable so much for the Institute, but smaller groups doing things like that could make it so you're more interactive with the people that are there. Q&A sessions, right? So like if a lecturer can have a Q&A session, say, okay, we're going to do a walkthrough of how to approach this assignment. And, this brief that I've just given you, so if it's, have a look at it, and then in a week's time we're going to do a walkthrough of what it might look like for you to finish it. And one of my favorites is authentic assessments, and I have to tell a short story here. I know we're a little over time, but when I was first lecturing, actually in arts management, who's doing arts management? Yeah. It was like my first class, and I was doing introduction to theater in first years. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to, we've got copies of Death of a Salesman up in the library. This was 100 years ago, not that much, but anyway. So I said, okay, read the play, and you're going to write an essay on it, okay? And I gave the outline of the essay and sort of the themes to look for. Well, I got these essays back, and they were all plagiarized. I mean, up the, seriously, like huge chunks of text just dumped, And I was like, holy crap. And I got the feeling that no one had read the play. And we were going to see Brian Dennehy, who was doing it at the time, here in Ireland. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to learn my lesson in a couple different ways. But we went to the play, and then I said, I'd like you to resubmit these because, and I had told them, it was my fault. I gave a really stupid assessment. It was completely my fault. But what happened was they didn't want to read the play. Plays aren't meant to be read. They're meant to be seen, performed, right? And then the reading of it makes more sense. And then the reading around it makes more sense because you've experienced it. And what I found was that if you can bring something experiential into your assessment profile with your students, that kind of almost gets rid of plagiarism because they have their own experience of something, right? And I think here in IDT we really endeavor to do that. So that's an example of a more authentic assessment because you can't plagiarize, you know what I mean? You just can't. If you've lived it, then you own it. All right, and that's kind of Bowd as well. David Bowd, he's one of these educational guys, talks about experiential learning, how important it is. And I think all of your courses try to do something like that. But like I've always said, I pride myself on being a very, very good lecturer. But boy, God, was that the dumbest thing any lecturer has ever done. Like it's inviting you. You just look up Death of a Salesman, you're going to get 25 and probably emails and things on your Facebook page or your WhatsApp or whatever saying, I can do this for you. It's just terrible. It was so embarrassing. Anyway, so yeah, sorry. No. So actually, this is the thing. So there's a couple points here. Have pride in your work. It doesn't matter if it's a C. It doesn't matter, right? You did it. You own it. Have pride in that because if you learn from that, the next one will be better, right? It makes a huge difference. And also in past and progress years, I'm not encouraging you not to do your best work all the time, but in past progress year, it doesn't matter if it's a C. Well, it kind of does, but I mean, don't ache about that. If you get a C, that's grand. Maybe we're under a lot of pressure.
Something that you can gain from that is it is your work and it was the best work you did on that day. If there is something going on, whether you're not well, there's something going on at home, or you're stressing about something else, or there's another assignment that's due, it's still your work. You've put that effort and that time in, and whatever grade you get, whether that's an A, a B, a C, whatever, that is your work, and you should be proud of that because you've achieved something.
Absolutely.
And you put that time and effort in, and you can say, you can get that authentic feedback back and say, okay, this is what I did really well, and I can put that aside and say I'm really good at that, and this is what I can work on, whether it's referencing or putting more research into sculpture or imaging or whatever it is that you're doing.
And as well, if you're struggling in any way, shape or form, if you've stuff going on, if your mental health isn't that great, if you try and ignore it and just keep going, you're on a much higher risk of actually kind of falling on the final hurdle as the year goes on. If you engage in conversations with your lecturers and reach out to student support services, they will do every single thing, and of course students union goes without saying, but they will do everything in their part to help you. And as well, if something happens, it's much more likely that you'll be able to do something to get past it once other people are informed that you're struggling or having a tough time. If you miss a deadline without ever telling anyone, it's much more difficult to deal with that going forward, whereas if people are aware, it's a collaborative effort going forward.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the presentation's basically done. These are some takeaways for you to think of. Some of them are on the responsibility of the lecturers, and some are on responsibility of students, and that's kind of what we want to encourage all the way through. Are there any kind of questions before you get lunch vouchers? Any thoughts?
I have one question.
Sure.
Because one of the websites you said that they sometimes just proofread Like instead of doing it, and I'm confused on what's the difference between that and like websites like Grammarly and stuff, or is the Grammarly also wrong? Like not
No.
using Grammarly?
No, Grammarly's, no, that's okay. Grammarly is okay.
Okay.
They're not going to give you, you don't have to, you're paying a subscription. Are you doing the subscription one or the free
I just
one?
had a free trial.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Grammarly's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's great.
I love Grammarly.
Our assistive technologist, Colin
Uses
P,
it.
will use Grammarly, and he will also like recommend it to students who maybe have dyslexia or struggle with just getting grammar correct. And that's okay because it's just kind of telling you this sentence structure is kind of wonky or that word is spelled wrong.
Yeah.
It's not actually writing or putting the content in, it's just editing your content, whereas like, that word is incorrectly spelled. It's not creating the content for you.
Yeah.
And a lot of the proofreading is directed towards international students a lot of the time, because you might be uncomfortable with,
Absolutely.
writing in English. But what they can do then is they can come back to you and say, this isn't good enough, we should do it for you. So
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
so.
Those are the essay mill kind of peeps.
Yeah.
So don't,
And I suspect it's also about giving details. They now have your details.
Yeah.
So the proofreading is something I think is really important for any of us. I mean,
yeah.
And getting into the habit of having a friendly study buddy where you exchange your work
Exactly.
is probably the best way of dealing with that,
Yeah.
because it gives that distance. Someone else sees something that you miss.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
like proofreading is something, you should invest in someone, a good
Something
pal.
that I would have done when I was doing my essays is my best friend, we were in the same course, so what we would do when we'd finish our essays around the same time, we'd swap our laptops and we'd read each other's work, and we would just say, this you missed a reference here, or
This
this
isn't
could be
clear,
worded
yeah.
slightly right, or that you could expand on this a bit more, and we would then be talking about the subject, and our creative thoughts would be going, and we'd be like, actually wait, I could add this in, or this could
Yeah.
improve it here, and then we'd swap our laptops back and furiously start writing some more. But I think that's a great idea, is getting a friend or even somebody in a different course who doesn't understand the material
Fresh eyes.
as well, to kind of read that, or a family member as well, if you're able to get a family member at home, just to be like, can you just quickly read this paragraph for me? But yeah.
Yeah, my poor mother nearly did most of her nursing degree. I was like, read this for me. But as well, I think one part that maybe we haven't touched on, it's always kind of, it's tangential a little bit, but group work can be really difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
And probably very relevant to you all, because it can be really challenging if you don't know what another person is doing, or if it's a big project, or this, that, or the other thing.
Yeah.
So always it comes back to maintaining communication with your lecturer or your module coordinator or whoever it is. If you have concerns, raise them early, and don't let other people down, because that is always our biggest fear. And in flagging something early, never let somebody down.
Yeah.
You don't. So just be aware of that one as well, because it can be a bit of a beast in itself.
Exactly. Any other questions? Because I know you're all hungry. Can I just take this moment to thank Megan? Maybe you can come back and talk about group work another time, because that is a hot topic, really. How do you negotiate it if you have someone who's not pulling their, you know what I mean? Oh, I hate that.
It's
you know what I
really
mean?
hard. It's really
yeah,
really
so
hard.
we'll have to get some strategies on
I
it.
recently had to deal with that, and one of the participants actually got COVID as well. So
Oh, golly.
it's just like,
Kill me now.
It's really
literally
tough.
take me.
Yeah,
just flag it. The last thing I will say is I'm the co-chairperson of the communications working group coming out of Nain, which is working on all of this messaging.
Now,
I'm
what
not sure.
does NAIN stand for?
Sorry, the National Academic Integrity Network. This is all my baby, so if any of you ever want to speak about this, I'll talk to you about it forever. But if you have anything that you would like to see in messaging from KPOI, from USI, anything like that, please always feel free to reach out. I'll pass my email on to Rebecca and stuff, but it is literally education@usi.ie. I love hearing from people, so if we can improve that messaging and make it more accessible in any way, shape, or form, please do.
So would they be able to follow QQI on Twitter, or what's the best way to interact with them?
QQI is a little bit averse to social media, but they're great. But they have a Twitter, and a lot of the crossword puzzles that came out last week or the week before, I'm not sure if you saw any of them, so that was some of the content that came from that working group. But the USI on Twitter and USI.ie on Instagram, and also USI_education is me. I talk a lot about this kind of stuff online. But yeah, if there's anything that you have an idea It's never too small what we could do with them. So please do let us know.
Can I make just one final point?
Sure.
Because I think the other thing we kind of have to remember is, like, ultimately this is about learning, and you know, if someone else does it for you, you haven't learned anything, and like learning is incremental, and like I sometimes say to students, like, if we could do it in 2 months, we'd do it in 2 months. You know, we wouldn't keep you here for 4 years if we didn't have to. So it's always like, I think it's really important to think about what, you know, you miss out so much. Like if you leave 60% of it out, you know, you're not really learning what you're here to learn.
Yeah.
And there is something that drew you here to learn the thing that you love, hopefully.
Yeah.
So I know in the middle of November is a great time actually to do something like this, because the gloss of kind of the start of the year has worn off, and the mornings are getting dark, and it's, you know, and deadlines are coming. And there is an inevitability about some deadlines all coming together, because, you know, there is a beginning, a middle and an end and, of term that happens. But it's kind of trying to remember that the passion and the interest and what you're not getting by, you know, giving someone €250.
Oh, for God's sake!
And being
If I could
blackmailed for
afford that,
$2,000, you know, so it's just remember the passion and the love you have for the thing that you're
doing.
you're
why
here.
You're here. Why you're here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I do understand we lose sight of it. I lose sight of it myself sometimes.
Oh,
But
we all do.
It's good to remember that actually, you know, you're not here to kind of take shortcuts. You're here to learn because you love what you do.
And we love what we do too, which is
And
exciting.
yeah,
So that brings me to the last couple of things. The first thing is, don't forget to write thoughts about what it is to be a great student, or what do you wish for in a great educator. And there's events going on like this week, next week, the week after. So try to come along. And if you liked it today,
This is the bribe, by the way.
yeah. If you liked today, then tell friends. Let's fill up this space, because tomorrow we're talking about
Using images in teaching.
using images in teaching, which I hope a lot of lecturers can avail of. I've had a lot of interest online on it, but I think it's really interesting because it's an interactive workshop, which is kind of nice. So you get to bring your smartphones and you'll be able to take part in that. And then the day after is we're looking at smaller projects that have been done here in IDT. So it's kind of a fair, very casual, kind of come and go as you like. So you're like, booyah! Got me lunch money. So I cannot thank you enough for taking a pause in your studies and doing this. I want to thank our film team, led by the wonderful John Scully and the beautiful Vicki Noonan and the rest of you guys. So thank you very, very much. And again, thank you to Megan O'Connor, who took time out to come here, and of course, someone who's always here, and I would die without, is Rachel. And thank you. Just thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much.